Welcome back. Public protests for human rights violation, political outcries and revolutions have been held in different parts of the world since time immemorial. And some popular protests include anti-Iraq war protests in the year 2003, the Baltic Way in the year 1989, George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter, and the recent anti-government protests witnessed in South Africa, Nigeria, Tunisia, and here in the country, where it was led by Azimio chief Raila Odinga. This marking the second week of the mass action protests. And just like any other protest, human rights issues are arising. Matters to do with police brutality, livelihoods have been disrupted through the destroying of property, injuries, and in worst case scenarios, death. Whether we like it or not, the impact of these protests are felt every inch by the society, by families, by children. And this is why tonight, counseling psychologist Wanjiru Gathingi joins me in studio to discuss the human rights issues, mental health issues, and the price the community is paying for these protests. Welcome, Wanjiru Gathingi, to our studios.
Thank you very much.
Right, let's get to it. Now, since the protest began 2 weeks ago, we have been receiving disturbing reports of destruction of property, journalists, students, police officers, and other citizens being injured or even losing their lives. And this is so disturbing to the citizens of this country to watch. Wanjiru, how would you describe the mental and emotional state of Kenyans at the moment with regards to the protests?
For sure, there is a huge impact on the mental health of Kenyans and all Kenyans, from the little children who are going to school or who are watching their televisions at home, to the old grandma back in the village who is watching the city go into chaos where the son or the daughter is. And so for sure, as a nation, all of us, we are going through a very, very stressful time. Because on Monday morning, one is not sure how the day will turn out. One is not sure whether tear gas will get into the office or the matatu, or they will even get transport back home, leave alone going to work. So it's a very, very stressful time. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of fear. And all these things impact on our mental health. Because mental health, one of the measures of mental health is how one is able to work out their abilities. Now our businesses have been affected, the way we go to work or the way we operate during the day, because we are not sure how the day will turn out, for sure has been affected. So it's really impacting on our mental health, all of us. Even the protesters themselves, every morning they wake up, they are not sure how it will turn out. Will one of us die?
Absolutely.
Will one of us be injured? Even the main political players, they're also not sure how it will be. So it's very, very stressful.
So there are so many uncertainties surrounding this.
Oh, yeah.
And now that you have mentioned the protesters and the people leading, the politicians leading these protests, from a psychological point of view, would you term the protests as coming from an accountability place or from a revenge place?
Now that I'm a Kenyan and I've been in the country for a while, and whatever we are seeing during this time is something that is more historical. And looking at the history of this nation, every time there is an election, there seems to be a lot of tension, and where we get political leaders who become a problem other than giving us a solution. Because leaders are meant to give solutions.
Right.
So it's really an appalling state of affairs that this nation is not able or has not matured enough to manage political issues to an extent that it's now impacting on the mental health of our children. For instance, I have a little girl in grade 3.
Right.
And she kept asking me, Mom, why is Raila fighting and yet we have a president? And now for that little child, they do not understand. They may not fully understand what is happening. To them, it's a fight.
Right.
And a fight, what they have heard about fights is that they are messy, people die.
Right.
So I think it's there is political irresponsibility, I would say. And as a people, the general population, again, we are not able to regulate ourselves, to separate politicians. Because looking at the history, just a few months ago, when there was the handshake government, this same person, the cost of living was, it was still relatively high.
Right.
But these people are singing a different song. When did the song change? So it's really a sad state of affairs. So it's the nation, the political leaders unable to manage the politics of the day.
Right.
And in return, it affects all of us, which is really sad.
It's quite unfortunate.
Yeah, it's very
and
unfortunate.
you're mentioning something about your little girl and the impact that this has on the kids. And I want you to hold on to that thought. We'll come back to that. But before we go to that, let's talk about the people who are involved. The youth are the majority. So why maybe are the youth at the forefront of this?
Young people have a lot of energy, generally. A lot of energy, a lot of time. And for them, to some extent, it may just be fun. I mean, I got nothing to lose other than just sit and watch. I can as well dispense this energy. So for some of the young people who find themselves in it, it's maybe just because of the fun of it, and it's so easy to convince a young person, especially where they have been convinced that you don't have a job because we have the wrong political leadership. And you see, young people are looking for hope at any given time. They are looking for something to latch on.
Right.
And so when somebody seems to speak louder, even when they do not have a clear vision, then young people just follow. So it's unfortunate that our politicians, over the years, we have seen that they have used our young people in the university. Some even young people who are in high school, which is really, really sad.
And it's more of an issue of unemployment, but at the same time, they might also find there's some fun to it.
I wouldn't say it's an employment per se. Because for sure, even years back, when we hear that there were more jobs, there were still people who were unemployed.
Right.
Of course, the population is bigger, but we are having a population that is more educated, more people who are educated without formal employment. Because for a long time, we had left the informal employment for people who many people who were in employment but had started side hustles in the informal sector.
Right.
So it's like they were leading the economy both in the formal and in the informal. And the young people looked at the informal sector like it's for people who are not educated.
Right.
So for for many years, young people could not do the dirty work, as they called it, the farming, those technical jobs, a whole engineer.
Everyone wanted a white-collar job.
Yes. So unemployment could be part of it, but a huge part of it, I think it's more the attitude that we have towards work.
Now, coming back to the entire Kenyan society at large, what are the psychological effects of protests and the aftermath of it?
Oh, the psychological impact of protests, a protest like this one, is so deep that it would cause PTSD, which is a disorder that would take some time to treat, because there is a fear. Fear, where will that bullet pass? Will it come through my window or through my wall? Fear, because of lost livelihoods. We've seen businesses that have been burnt. We've seen businesses that are not making money. So for sure, people are going to lose jobs. We've seen people who are not able even to go out and do just their usual jobs. They cannot hawk. They cannot go to the market to buy their stuff, Mama Mboga or that Wanjiru down there. And Poverty is one driver of mental illness or mental disability, if I may use that word. Poverty, insecurity, like what we are seeing right now. We also have the issues of just conflicts, because we are seeing a lot of conflicts right now, like what happened in Kibera, where Christians and Muslims. Now that's conflict. You can imagine the tension that is in that community, yet these are people who are neighbors. And all this impacts the mental well-being of the individuals who have been directly involved, and even those of us who are just watching from the comfort of our homes, because you do not know whether after Northlands will they be coming to our estate or to my home. So it's impacting on our mental health as Kenyans in general, and so it's deep.
So you say the implications cut deeper than we actually know.
Oh, they are deep. They are deep. Watching the blood flow, watching the ambulances, just watching the destruction itself. It's a picture that impacts on one's mental well-being. And it may go longer, because we've hardly recovered from the post-election
violence that happened in 2007.
Yeah, we've hardly recovered from the COVID-19, the deaths that we saw and the economy that was hurting. Again, now we are going through another traumatizing season, so it's deep.
And when we talk about the society, Wanjiru, it is inevitable, as you said, to leave out children in this conversation. Now, will the state of the country have an implication on how the children will grow up? Talk about that.
Oh, for sure. For sure, the way our children grow is affected. Even the way we are as a people right now is affected by the communities where we grew in. And we see some of that impact when some older people who are there when like the bomb blast happened, or when we had a lot of those terror attacks. The story is aligned to that, and the destruction. Like for instance, even when we would see a lot of buildings collapsing, the famous Sunbeam, the one that was in Nairobi, there are people who still talk about it. And maybe just to give you an example of when the first bomb blast happened, it happened in 2008, and in 2018 I saw a patient who had come to my therapy room, and she was having crazy anxiety. It was a lady, and the anxiety, as we tried to peel and to see where did all this begin, it was linked to the bomb blast.
How many years are we talking about?
10 years.
Look at that.
10 years. And she spoke of that day, the conflict they had, the spouse had died in that, and whatever she was going through was linked to that. The guilt, the pain, 10 years later. So it's when our children are growing in such a violent environment right now, it goes deep to the unconscious, and we never know, because now our children have started knowing that Azimio, that people who support Azimio
are the ones fighting.
Are the ones fighting the other one. So they go like, "Mom, are you supporting Azimio or
pro the government?"
Yes. So the children already are starting to have a dichotomized thinking, and yet in school they are being given this environment that it doesn't matter your tribe, it doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't So it's something that cuts really, it goes very, very deep.
Right. Now, what implications do protests extend to families?
Lost livelihoods. There is also conflict, because you find if me as a wife, I'm like, oh yeah, Baba should have been the president. And maybe my husband is like, does it matter? What value would it have added to the home? So it brings a lot of tension at home.
A lot of divides.
Yes, a lot of divides. Of course, now the way even the family interacts in relation to issues politics changes the environment of the home. Of course, talking of people losing jobs, again, because of the political issue.
Still cuts deep and affects the families.
It affects the family. So when the family is living in such an environment where maybe a spouse is not even able to come home after work because of, or coming too late, it really affects the family.
Now, as we almost come to a close, I wanted to talk about the human rights that are violated or infringed during these protests.
Yeah. One, the right to the freedom of movement, because when there is a protest, I no longer, or people no longer go to town on Monday, or they are no longer free. Yeah, they have to fight for their lives. Yeah. Right to even information, because we see a lot of fake news sometimes, because we'll see pictures running across the social media that were not the actual pictures. And so people are just tortured and polarized in their thinking. And again, this is a mental health, or rather a human right violation. The fact that some people are not even able to access medical care because on that day, the acute room or even the ambulances are so busy following the people who are in protest that if somebody calls for an emergency at home, they may not be able to access it fast because of what is happening. So there's a lot of human rights violation other than the people we are seeing who are being killed. And all this again pushes the issue of mental health well-being in the Kenyan population.
Wanjiru, can we do anything about the psychological implications the protests are causing? Because I really understand that it cuts so deep. Can we do anything about it?
Oh, yes. One of the things that we would do, first we need to, and I know this has been said several times, we need to have a dialogue as a nation to really ask ourselves, is this the trajectory that we want to take? That every time we are having a political issue, we have to take it to the streets. The other thing, I take it back to each and every individual, each and every person, you and me. How do you take care of yourself? Could we learn some life skills where we would be able to deal with some of these conflicts? We would be able to do some decision making where I can be able to make a decision and ask myself, yes, a political leader is telling me to go to the streets. What value will it add? Will it reduce the price of sugar? When we fight for 2 days, what will that do to the economy? What will that do to my health as a person? So that from that information, I can be able to make a sober decision and be able to think more of being a solution instead of being a problem. So we can do something right from our own homes, or right from even our own hearts and minds, where we tell ourselves that I will take care of my mental health, I will take care of my health, then I will take care of my neighbor's health, I'll take care of my community's health, and this ripple effect will run or flow to the whole nation.
And I believe that is the call you're extending to the public and to the government and to young people as well.
Yes.
Perhaps you could give us your parting shot as we call it a close.
Seek peace and pursue it. Seek peace as a young person, as a mother, as a father, as a political leader. Seek peace and pursue it. Thank you.
Seek peace and pursue it. I believe as a nation, we really need to have that conversation about the traumatic experiences that we have had as a country. Thank you so much, Wanjiru Gathingi, for that, a counseling psychologist. And we can keep this conversation going on online. Keep your feedback coming on our social media handles at KUTV_Kenya, at Mercy Imbinda, using the hashtag KUTV Primetime News. We are taking another short break. We'll be back with more. Keep watching.